We've hit, I've started, I've started. We've hit the middle of the course. I'm going to do, like last week, a short summary of what we did. And today, really, the goal is to put another layer of things that we've done already, especially because from next week, I will give you a new tool which is called Pandas, which is a very powerful library for data handling that has been developed in the last years. And I didn't want to start with this today because I really want the NumPy and the matplotlib stuff to sync. Okay? So today we're going to see a few, I'll reach this in a second. I will explain you what we will do today. Okay, so this is a reminder of what we've done so far, and all of these topics should be crystal clear in your head. Okay. Last week we've added a layer of NumPy, and we gave us a SciPy example. I forgot to add here matplotlib. Okay. I've loaded yesterday the lecture to the Moodle, so I've made sure to write in the matplotlib notes what you need to know absolutely, and the stuff that you just need to know that they exist. Okay, so everything that we did with the simplest plots. Okay, the simplest plots, the one plot. Okay, with the markers, the line style, the marker size, the example, the colors of the markers, the size of the markers, the labels of the X and Y axis, the title. All of this is stuff that you really need to know by heart. Okay, the grid, how to add a grid to a plot, how to show a plot. All of this basic stuff you need to know. You need to know how to make a subplot. Okay, with like a matrix of many small plots. And what we did beyond this, okay, the ImShow plots, which was the 2D plots, and the 3D plots, these are things that you just need to know that they exist, okay, that Python gives you the ability to do it, and you need to know how to ask Google how to do it well, okay, but these are not things, the 2D and 3D plots are not things that you need to know by heart, okay, but I insist that the simple plots, the 1D plots and the subplots are stuff that you really need to know. If I wake you up at night, you should be able to code it. Okay, so I didn't add it here. And today I will give you a few more, I would say, more advanced tips for using NumPy, and one very important tip for using matplotlib. If we have time at the very end, we'll come back to the interpolation example of SciPy that I showed you last time, because I assume that everybody knows what we mean by interpolating, and I realize this is not the case. So if we have time at the end, we'll move back to this. And then what we will do, okay, I showed you that especially all these modules give you some superpowers, okay, on top of the very basic stuff that you can do with Python, and that they are I would say, the main asset of Python, all these libraries. This is why we like Python. But just because you have superpowers doesn't mean you don't need a shield protection, okay? And today we will talk about dealing with problems in Python. Okay, especially dealing with them before they occur. So we'll see how to code, we call it to code defensively, okay? To code in a way that the problems you expect will be handled the way you want, okay? And we'll touch on debugging. This we will do it also, we'll touch on it also next time. But this will be the beginning of long series of tips that I will start giving you today, and I will give you until the end of the lecture on how to deal with issues and what are the most common issues that we deal with when coding in Phython. Okay, so let's start with this part, which has an overlap with the topics we spoke about last time. So we'll start with sorting arrays, sorting NumPy arrays. So there are two very interesting functions in NumPy called sort and argsort. We'll look at an example in a second, which allow you to sort 1D arrays, of course, but they also allow you to sort arrays along specific axes. Okay, and before I show you an example, this is very important. Okay, this is from the Python documentation, this part. You might have come across keywords in many NumPy functions that allows you to specify axis equals 0 or 1. Did you see this before? You've started practicing NumPy today in the tutorial? Okay, so I will show you what I mean in the example. But basically, very often in NumPy functions, you can specify axis equals 0 or axis equal 1. It will become clearer in a second when we see examples. And the important thing is that by axis equals 0, we actually mean columns. Okay, it's slightly counterintuitive. Okay, so I will read what we have here. The moment you have an axis with more than one dimension, a NumPy array with more than one dimension, you can define a keyword called axis in many functions. So the first axis equals 0, it runs vertically. It's the columns. It's counterintuitive because this is not like we're used to indexing lines first and then columns. Okay, so axis equals 0 refers to columns. And axis equal 1, okay, it runs horizontally. So it runs along the lines. Okay, I'll show you an example in a second. So let's start with sorting arrays. Okay, so I'll make a new Python file and we'll call it lecture 6. Okay, so let's assume that I have, okay, so what do I need to do first? I need, of course, to import NumPy as np. And let's assume that I have an array, 1D array. You give me some numbers.
7, 10, 4.
Okay, this will be enough. And I want to sort this array. Okay. Okay, so this gave me a sorted version of the array B. Okay, so it's pretty simple. Now, what if I want now not the sorted version, but the indices that would sort the array? Do you see what I mean? Like, what if I want, instead of having a sorted version, I want Python to tell me what are the indexes of the sorted version? You see what I mean? So here we would start with 1, okay, and then the next one would be 4, right, etc., etc. So there is a very neat function called argsort. Argsort B. Okay, and let's guess together what it should give me.
Give you
5,
0,
1, 4.
1. Okay, so
1,
there is 1, 2,
3.
3, 4, 5 elements. So okay, 0, 4,
1,
1,
2,
0, 4, 2, 3, and
0, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, right? Because I remind you that the indexes are starting at 0.
0.
Okay? And indeed, it's giving me 0, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So these are the basic sorting functions in NumPy. Now, what? כן.
זה מסדר את האינדקסים לפי הגודל?
זה מסדר, instead of sorting, במקום לתת לי את המערך הממוין, זה נותן לי את מערך האינדקסים שממיינים לי את המערך. אוקיי? Let's put it different. If I have C equal B NumPy arc sort B. Let's see if it works. Okay, you see that if I take B is the it's the NumPy array before I sorted it. Okay, and now I give it the indexes of NumPy arc sort. Okay, so then it gives me the sorted array. Do you understand? Who didn't understand? כולם הבינו?
תגידי את זה.
כן. פה מה עשיתי? I say it in Hebrew, okay? To clarify. So, מה עשיתי פה? B זה הלא ממוין, סבבה? ועכשיו אמרתי לו, תיקח את B, אבל באינדקסים האלה שארקסורט החזיר לי, אז זה ייתן לי B ממוין. אתה מבין? ה-NumPy ארקסורט זה נותן לי אינדקסים ממוינים. בסדר?
כן.
Okay, good. So, what if I now have, this is all very easy to understand because we're talking 1D, okay? What if I now have a 2D array? Okay, so let's call it A equal NumPy array 1, 4, 5 and 3, 1, 2. Okay. Okay, and now what will happen if I sort A? So I will. So you see that here PyCharm gives me the option to specify axis. Okay, this is what I just mentioned in the slide. So let's see if you remember. Axis equals 0.
Column.
The columns. Okay. So we'll see in a minute what we mean by sorting along the columns. Okay, and axis equal 1 will be sorting along the lines. Okay. Now you can have, we didn't really touch this, but you can have n-dimensional arrays in NumPy. Okay, you don't have to have 2D arrays. You can have 3 by 3 by 3 or etc. Okay. So the important thing is that axis, you can number axis from 0 to the size of your array, and -1 is the last dimension. Okay, this is the same way we index lists. Okay, so let's see what happens if we give it axis equal none. Okay. Sorted A equal print sorted A. Okay. So A is okay. So A, this is A, okay, and now I gave it axis not. So what did it do? It's
הוא ביטל את הציר.
It sorted everything, but it didn't sort
Yes.
it within the matrix.
exactly. So Yair said it sorted as everything regardless of dimensions, right? So what it did is that it flattens the array. Okay, it considered the array as a 1D array, and it sorted it. Okay. Now let's try to give it A equal and B sort A axis equal 0. Okay, so what did it do now? It sorted thing by going column by column. Okay? So it starts with the first columns, it doesn't touch it. Then it goes to the second column. Okay? And then it sorts the second column. So it changes 1 and 4.
Yeah, it's not clear because it happened to come out sorted perfectly.
No, it's not.
No.
They are not
If
the
you
same.
switch the 4 and the 5, it might be easier to see how it works.
These two arrays are different.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
no, it looks like you sorted the whole thing, not just the columns.
I see what you mean. Okay, so let's try.
reverse the 4 and the 5.
No, but it will always look this way. I think. Okay, we can do 1, 1, 3. I think it will always.
He's right, if you switch the 4 and the 5.
Okay,
That
so
also.
we broke the generous, okay? So it starts with the first column. So axis 0, I remind you, it goes first column, then second column, okay? It goes through columns. So it takes the first column, doesn't touch it. Then go to the next one, sorts it. Then go to the next one, sorts it, etc., etc. Okay? Make sense? Now let's try to give it axis 1. Okay? So here it does like we did before. It takes the first line, doesn't touch it, then takes the second line, sorts it. Okay, you see? The second line here, this line, it takes the first line, doesn't touch it, goes to the next line, sorts the next line.
שהוא כבר כאילו מסודר הראשון, בגלל זה הוא לא נוגע.
לא, הראשון הוא לא נוגע בו, זה כמו שכשעשינו axis equal 0, the first column doesn't touch it, then it goes to the next column, tack, okay? So you should have, it's not easy to remember and it can be confusing, and the best way when you code is to always have on the sides a small open like this kind of session where you can check things and remind yourself. I have to remind myself this axis thing sometimes, okay, to make sure that it's doing the right thing, okay, that it's behaving as you expect.
אז גם אם השורה הראשונה לא הייתה מסודרת,
בואו נראה. אתה יודע מה? בואו נראה. אז בואו ננסה 5. יכול להיות שהוא כן יעשה את זה, אבל זה בדיוק, it's exactly the reason why you can double check. Okay, so it did Okay?
אז הוא לא
It
מדבר.
took the first line, sorts it. Then goes to the second line, sorts it, etc. But the important thing is that axis equal 1 goes lines by lines, and axis equal zeros goes columns by columns, and that it's slightly counterintuitive because it's the opposite of what we're used to. Okay? We're used to the fact that first dimension is lines, second dimension is columns, so it's the opposite. Okay? Okay. So this is what I wanted, and arcsort would have similar behavior. Okay, I don't want to go through this. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you regarding sorting stuff. Now, let's talk a bit NumPy and conditions. You remember that I showed you that you can have Boolean arrays with NumPy, and you can use conditions to select certain areas in your array. So we'll talk a bit more about this today, and specifically I will introduce you to two functions, npAll and npAny. Okay, these two can be confusing. Okay, I'm showing you now the confusing NumPy stuff. Okay, this lecture could have been called NumPy, the tricky stuff. Okay, so we'll talk about npAll and npAny. So these are two functions that are used for testing if all elements in an array verify a certain condition, or if any element in an array verify a certain condition. Do you understand the difference between these two statements? Yes? כולם מבינים? Yes?
הראשון זה להכל והשני זה אם קיים אחד.
כן. Okay? So, of course, they act on Boolean arrays. Okay? So npAll, it asks whether everything along a given axis, the same way we did now, is true. Okay? And npAny tests whether anything is true along a given axis. But the important thing is that very often, if you have conditions, you can bring yourself to dealing with Boolean array. Okay? For example, if you have an array which is full of numbers and you want to check are these numbers higher than a certain threshold, okay, then A higher than the threshold is a Boolean array. Okay, so let's look at an example of these two functions. Okay, and this is just to remind you what we talked about with the axis, because it will become now critical. Okay, so let's assume that I have an array which is full of Boolean values, true and true. Okay, so what happens if I ask it npAll A? Okay, you should have an idea because of what we did before. Okay, let's print A. So A is a 2D array. Okay, so here I didn't specify any axis. What do you think will happen? We did something similar, 2 minutes ago. Okay, so it will flatten the array, Okay, the same way it did for outside, it will flatten the 2D array. It will consider it like a 1D array. It will give me an answer as if A was a flat array. Okay? Now let's specify an axis. Okay? So axis 0, what do you think it will do now?
True and false.
True and false? Why?
Because it goes true and then false true.
Because axis equals 0 goes through the columns, okay? So it starts with the first columns, everything is true in the first column. Okay, so we're good, so it's true. But then in the second column, we have one false and one true, so, okay, so let's see. And indeed, it gave me a true and a false. Okay, so what you need to have in mind is this axis thing, and then everything is clear. Okay? Okay, and now let's try just to make sure we understand. What will axis equal 1 give me?
False and true.
False and true. Why? Because it starts with the first line, right? It starts with the first line. Along the first line, numpy all is not true, okay? And then it goes to the second line and everything is true in the second line, okay? Okay, so we're good? Everybody understands the behavior of numpy all? Yes? Yes. Okay. Now let's try numpy any.
זה דומה לאיחוד וחיתוך כזה.
נכון? כן. מה שחשוב זה לזכור איך הוא עובר במערך, אוקיי? So numpy any,
אז זה בכל מקרה טוב.
אז נכון, אז numpy any יהיה נכון עכשיו, אבל בואו נשים פה שני false, אוקיי? So do you understand why we get a false true? איך קוראים לך? למה הוא נותן false true?
הוא הולך... כי אין לו... בשורה הראשונה אין לו בכלל טוב, אז הוא...
נכון, כי axis equal 1, it means that it starts with the first line, and at the first line none of the element is true, okay? So numpy any gives me a false. And then it goes to the second line, and numpy any gives me a true, and I can add here a false, I can have here a false. Oops. Didn't know you could do such thing. Did you see what happened? I was able to erase stuff from this area. Very strange. Okay, this is in Hebrew. Okay. So on the second line here I have two false, so numpy any is false. And here I have one false, one true, so numpy any is true. But numpy all will be false. Okay? Good. So I think we're good with all and any. There is one last very neat function that you need to remember. So I don't know if you remember last time, I think her name was Neta. She asked how would we load a file from a certain line in a file, you remember? And I told you that you can easily select indexes according to a specific argument, a condition, right? Do you remember? So I have a question to you. What kind of search would you do to Google to ask this question? Okay, if you want to check how to find the index of an array that verifies a certain condition. What would be, how would you search this on Google?
ולהוסיף פייתון ואז stack exchange.
עם כל המילות קישור?
Okay, you could drop the...
So you can do numpy, you don't have to say Python, okay? Numpy find index condition. That's enough. And you have 10 answers on how to do this thing. Okay? And sometimes you have to dig a bit in the answers to find the one that corresponds to what you're looking for. But I'll give you now a function that is called argware. Okay, I'll show you in a minute. So let's assume that we have an array. And this is a really, really important function. If you, okay, let's just make it okay, print A. Okay, and now I want to print all the indexes of A that corresponds to a number that are higher than 5. Okay, so if I print I higher than 5, okay, it will give me a Boolean array. This is not what I want, right? So I could do all kind of things. I could do range len A. Let's use the NumPy one. There is an arrange. Okay, so this is actually, let's make it to so it's not the same. Okay, so I could produce an array of indexes. Okay, and then apply it to this into this. Let's try to do it. So C equal this, and then C of A higher than 5. Let's see if it works. Still doesn't work. Okay. Ah. Okay, good. So this is one option. Okay, what did I do here? I produced C, which is an array of indexes. Okay, and then I applied C to the array of Boolean that is telling me, that is giving me false and true values depending on whether A is higher than 5. Okay, it's clear? So this is a 2-line solution to what Neta asked last time, but there is a more compact one, okay, which is it's a function called argware. There is also a function where in NumPy. I personally find it pretty confusing, so I try not to use it too much, but argware is very useful. Okay, so if I want to print argware of A higher than 5, this will give me all the indexes of A where A is higher than 5. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, it gives me this array of indexes and it's starting by 5. Do you see why? 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's starting here. So it's giving me all the indexes of the elements which are higher than 5. Okay? Now, what happens if A is a 2D array? Okay? Let's see what happens. So I'm going to take this from somewhere else. Okay, so I now made a 2D array. Let's look at how it looks. Okay, so it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a 10 by 3 by 10 array. Okay, And what happened if I want to use this argware function to give me the indexes of all the elements that are higher than 10, okay? So in this case, I don't want the flattened array, I want pairs of indexes, right? So you tell me, let's start at 15. So let's, you tell me, Ariel, what are the indexes of the elements that are higher than 15?
20.
The indexes.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll help you. This is 6. Okay. This gives you the error.
Bigger than 5.
Than 15.
Than 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm preparing the.
So. Uh, 16 till yeah.
No, I want the indexes. I don't want the values.
Okay. So you need the second line. And,
Okay.
and the 6th column.
Right, but second line is which index?
Is 1 and
Okay.
and 6.
Okay, so it's gonna be 1, 6, and then
1, 7, 1, 8.
okay. So let's see that this is what we get.
It's gonna be 6.
Okay, good. So it's starting at 1, 6. It's giving me all the pairs of indexes that are verifying this condition. Okay, so this is argware is super useful. I think you don't realize it yet, but it's super useful. It doesn't only give you the part of the array that verifies the condition, it gives you the indexes. Okay? So this is very useful stuff. And we now move on. So these were the more like tricky subjects I wanted to touch upon regarding NumPy. Okay? Now I'll give you one important tip that is related to Matplotlib. And then we will do a 5-minute break because this course is pretty technical and there is really very little room to make it less technical than what it is, okay? Because it's a pretty technical subject and we are ending the lecture with sleeping people, so we don't want this to happen. So we'll take a 5-minute break and you will go and eat something sweet, okay? And I will do the same so that we can reach the end of the lecture without falling asleep. Okay, so let's give you this small trick I wanted to add to what we discussed about NumPy, about Matplotlib, sorry. Okay, so do you remember how to show a plot that you've made? Assuming that you made a plot, you want to see it. plt.show. Now, if you don't put any plt.show in your code and you just put it at the end, what will happen? Did you try it?
You show me the last.
No, it won't show you only the last one. It will show you all the plots.
Yeah.
Okay, so plt.show is actually showing you whatever you plotted till the point that you've written it. Okay. So you can put it. You can choose to put it at the end of your code if you want, and it will show you everything. But here I want to show you the plots one by one. So stop and rerun. What's going on?
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Okay, so do you see this plot? I'm not making it bigger for a good reason. I'll do it in a second. Do you see? So these are the subplots that we talked about last time. Okay, this is the example we showed last time. Do you see that the title here is kind of stuck inside the x-axis of the, it doesn't look good. So you can start playing in subplots. You can, there is a parameter that governs the distance between these plots, and you can start playing with the margins, etc. But there is one magic command which I really recommend you put in all your plots, okay, together with the grid one, just makes things nicer, which is called plt.titlelayouts. Okay, I'm gonna show them now side by side. So you see that I'm plotting two figures here, and I'm only calling plot.show at the end. So it's going to show me the two plots at the end. Oh, come on. Okay. So, do you see the difference? Do you see that tight layout basically did all the work for you? Right? This is without using tight layout. So the title is here. This is not something you can put in a paper, okay? And here, it just assembles things so that it's tight and nice, okay? And it's a one-line command. So this is a really important tip that I really recommend you use every time you can, okay? And it's hard to tell. I mean, apart from the fact that the title here is not stuck, it's hard to tell exactly what it did, right? It's hard to tell what it did, but it's working. Okay? So...
Man, we have to put it before show?
You have to put it at the end of everything. Okay? It's actually... It will work only on whatever has been written so far. Okay? So if you put it here... Okay, it will make things tight until this point, and whatever you add after, it will ignore it. So you really want to put it at the very end of everything so that it acts on everything. Okay?
I plot even if I have more than one.
What?
Like if I have like 2, 3, 4 plots, then it works on all of them.
Yes. Yes. If you put it at the very end of your subplot matrix, it will work. Okay? And if you're plotting a simple plot with only one plot, usually you won't need to do this. You might sometimes, okay? Sometimes you have like big labels, okay? Sometimes here you will have names or very long numbers that you will want to put vertically. Okay, and then even when you have a one plot, not like a matrix of subplots, tight layout can be useful, okay? Because it will make sure that things don't overlap, that the labels, the text doesn't overlap with the numbers, okay? So, this was just to introduce a tight layout to you and encourage you to use it. Okay, so this is a line that can save your plot, and you can send it to, you can publish it, and you don't have to spend the day playing with the stuff yourself. Okay? Okay, so in the second part of the lecture, we will talk about the shield of the superhero. Okay, how to code defensively in order to avoid the bugs before they occur. Of course, there is a limit of how much you can do this, so we'll also start touching upon debugging stuff. But we'll first take a short break. Okay, so it's now 12:47. Let's start back at 12:55. Okay, and in this time you have something sweet or caffeinated, whatever. בחמישה ל.
אני שואל אותך שאלה. מה זה? הריינג' זה לסדר את הדברים לפי סדר עולה?
תלוי, יש שם איזשהו קיוורד, זה לא מסדר, סורט מסדר את הדברים. הריינג' זה נותן לך מערך של מספרים מ-0 עד משהו. הריינג' הוא לא מסדר, הוא רק נותן לך מערך של מספרים. אוקיי? ואתה יכול לשים לו קיוורד דיסנדינג, ואז זה יעפו לא פעם.
בסורט? אני יכול לעשות דיסנדינג בסורט?
כן.
ובמצב שאנחנו, כאילו, למשל בלולת פור, שאני עושה אז 4i ועוד איזה משהו, 4ij, אנומרייט, אני עושה כאילו אנומרייט. אני לא ממש הבנתי מה זה
אני יכולה להסביר לך בסוף השיעור, לא תלוי, ההבנה של ההמשך לא תלויה בזה, אני אסביר לך בזה.
כנראה את יותר, לא תשאר פה.
בסדר, אבל אני אסביר לך בסוף השיעור.
כן, כי אתה עושה יותר ממים ויותר מחומר גמיש.
הוא דחה את זה, נכון? שכתוב רק
מה זה זאת התפילה הזאת של הדיבור עם הקורן הגדול?
זה מגיב לך...
אתה אומר, אתה אקספט.
זה אחד שלו.
עושה מלא באגים.
כן, אבל יש לי מתכונת בראשון ובשני שאתה לא חק. אני כבר רוצה לסיים מפה. כשמתקשרים לאוניברסיטה, הסיכוי לקבל מענה וכל מסוים חיוב
וצריך להיות חידון ציון. אם היית אישה דתייה שם, זה רוצה לך.
אני לא.
למה לא?
זה רק לא משהו כזה. אני לא יכול ללמוד הרבה מהדבר.
ברור שלא אתה איזה הצהרה, אתה חידוני ציון באינטרנט, אתה לא עושה לב. אבל בדיוק.
סתם כמעט הסוף. מטלה כמעט אחרונה במשימות האסמכות. זה בכוונה יפה, כן? אבל שלנו לראשון.
בשנייה האחרונה עם כל הארץ זה היה נראה לי כמו
ערבי. כן. אתה מכיר ערבי טובה? מה ערבי?
פעם אהבתי לומר שיש חוק שאני יודע עוד שלוש שפות עברית, אנגלית וארמית.
אני לא יודע.
אבל בדיוק, אבל אז אני מגיע למקום שקמים פה דתיים, ואז יש אנשים שבאמת יודעים ארמית, ואז החיסרות הזה לא עובד.
זה נראה לי עונה להגדרות. נראה לי שיש...
לא, אני חושב שמעטים האנשים... אין לנו בפירושים. מעטים האנשים שיודעים לדבר ערבית שלנו.
ערבית בלי פירוט. יש כיום שפה שכאילו קוראים לארמית. יש אנשים שמדברים, אבל זה... כן, אבל
לא... יש יודעים ערבית, כי הם שומרונים.
באמת? לא, אבל זה לא ארמית.
זה ארמית עתיקה.
לא, אבל השפה של השומרונים היא לא ארמית עתיקה. השפה שלהם זה לא ארמית, זה כאילו זה כמו עברית.
אבל התורה שלהם זה ארמית.
לא, ממש לא, זה לא. בסדר, טוב, גם התנ"ך שלנו בארמית.
לא, אבל בחלק גדול שלו. בארמית עתיקה, אז הם מבינים.
לא, אבל העניין הוא, אבל התורה של השומרונים. התורה שלהם היא אותה תורה שלנו. זה אותו ספר.
כן, ברור.
אבל הכתב שלהם הוא לא בעברית עתיקה. הם כותבים בכתב שהוא כמעט עברית עתיקה. מה? רגע, יש לך שומרונים בשיטה?
שניים.
נכון, כי אתה גר בחולון, יש שם בדיוק זה. רגע, יש לך שכנים שומרונים?
שכנים?
כאילו יש לו, יש ברחוב לך גרים שומרונים?
לא,
אם אתה הולך לחוץ אתה רואה שומרונים?
מה נמצא? לא, אבל אני איתם אני רואה.
זה גם...
זה? אבל הם רגילים, איתי.
הם לא רגילים להם שומרונים.
זה כמו שאתה הולך ואתה רואה אותי.
אני מת על שומרונים, זה כל כך מגניב. כאילו זה כמו יהודים אבל לא.
אוקיי.
כאילו הם לא ערבים, במובן של מוסלמים זה, אבל הם גם לא יהודים. כי הם אמורים להיות הצאצאים של הסרט השבטים.
הוא עונה להגדרות.
מה?
הוא לא אוכל, לא סוכר ולא צודק קפה.
סוכרים, גלילים לחלוטין.
הם לא רגילים לחלוטין, הם שומרונים.
גלילים לחלוטין.
זה כל כך מגניב, הייתי רוצה להתחתן עם שומרונים. אם אני מתחתן עם שומרונים,
יש לך איזה 20 או איזה 15, לא יודע כמה. אני אגיד לך מה, היופי בשפת, יש מעל הרצאה בוודאות.
זה חדש אבל?
מה?
זה אם אתה חוזר להגיע
זה יישוב בין 10 שנים.
תגיד, אם אני מתחתן עם שומרונים,
אבל זה לא יגיע, זה לא יכול לקרות במדינת הדעת. אתה צריך, כן,
רגע, הם נחשבים או לא נחשבים?
לא שמתחתנים עם... לא, לא. רק אם הם יוצאים מהדת.
אתה רוצה לעבור?
רק אם הם יוצאים מהדת.
בסדר, אבל עדיין מבחינה אתנית הם שומרונים.
אבל הם לא, בדרך כלל מתחילים עם עצמם.
נכון, כמה שומרונים יש, כמה מאות מקסימום, לדעתי כמה עשרות.
לא, הרבה, רק בשכחתי שזה 15-20.
אתה יודע שאתה גר בחולון.
כמה אלפים?
נכון, כל השומרונים בעולם גרים או בחולון או בהרים. כן, אז זה לא, אתה אומר רק מה ששמעתם. רוב הנערים השומרונים בעולם כנראה נמצאים בקרבה.
לא, לא.
כן. אני מודה כמה שומרונים. נו בסדר, אבל לא בשכונה היחידה בעולם.
אני יוצא ב-8:30.
וואו, אני בודק כמה שומרונים יש בעולם.
840.
אתה רואה אמרתי כמה מאות.
ושתיים מתוך המקידה שלי, אתה מבין?
כן?
אבל זה לא שקט, האם את נגידה. מי זה גם ליאל פייתון?
זה יום אחד.
מה?
אי אפשר פשוט עובר בלי לעשות
או כאילו עושים את זה בתחילת זה
אז ביי באוניברסיטה יקרה.
עכשיו זה מתקדם.
וואו.
סילסטר הבא זה שם הסטרשופ.
סופר יפה. גם אלה מהכיתה שלי.
אתה עושה את זה גם?
אבל יש פה החלמה.
אני
פותח את השיעור בית, אני לא יודע מאיפה להתחיל.
מה?
עכשיו אנחנו עושים לו.
זה הבא. אני עשיתי בתור הראשון קורס בבן גוריון. זה כמו מבוא לתכנות.
אוי, זה עשיר.
זה הכל.
נכון,
כל הדרלים וסן וזה, זה דברים שאני מכיר אותם.
הייתי בטוח שיש כמה...
תקשיב, מה זה מתחילת של
להגיד לך את האמת?
כולם, אבל הרוב בייגון, אתה יודע.
דווקא לא ידעתי את זה.
כי כולם למדו באשכול. כי זה צמוד לאשכול, אתה יודע איפה לשכונה שומרונית.
כן, כן, אני יודע.
אחי, הוא חושב שאנחנו כאילו השף והמטלה.
כן, כן, אני יודע.
לא,
זה גיא, התרגילים האלה משנים קודמות. לא חידש שם שום דבר.
נו, אבל...
דיברתי עם גיא, אני חושב ש... יש לו זמן לשנות.
אני לא יודע.
אני חושב שעשיתי שום דבר. הייתי 18 כאלה.
לא,
דני,
כי הדבר הזה, אתה צריך כאילו לבנות 3 פונקציות של דאגים.
מאיפה לבנות מי?
Okay, so now in the coming half hour or so, why is it not charging my? Okay. So in the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, we will talk about how to deal with problems, mostly before they arise. But I would say a quick word on debugging. Okay, once the issue has arisen, and there are all kinds of tools. I think personally the easiest one to use is PDB. Okay, so I'm not sure what the P stands for, but DB is for debug, and I will show you how it works. Slideshow. Okay, so you import it. I'm pretty sure it's in the standard library, but I'm not sure. Okay, you import PDB and then you write whatever you want, your code. And let's say that you want the code to stop at a certain point, okay, and print something. Then you would add this line, pdb.setTrace, okay, and at this point the code would stop, okay, and it will ask you to type C to continue or X to end, okay, and this allows you to print things on the go, so that if you want to check the value of a certain variable on the go, if your code is clearly buggy and you don't know where exactly the bug happens, it allows you to print stuff on the go, okay, and have like milestones inside the code. And I think this is a really a good tool for basic debugging. Okay, so let's show you an example. כן, אבל, okay, so on the PyCharm sheet you can also use these like red dots, right? Is that what you mean? Right, so these red dots, it's like I think the equivalent in MATLAB, but many of us, I mean, it's true that you can do this. I don't know, how do you continue after it stops with the red dot? This PDB thing does not depend on the platform, and I think this is what makes it okay. It's something you put inside the code. So I personally don't use PyCharm. Okay, I just use a Vim editor, and then I run the code. And if you want your code to be usable by other, etc., okay, if you don't want it to depend on the platform, PDB is a good option. But of course, there are tons of materials for debugging that you can use, and I'm only giving you an example. So this code is doing blah blah. PDB set trace print I have continued.
תגידי, מעיין, ה-PDB זה יהיה במבחן וכאלה, או שזה רק לשימוש עצמי שלנו?
So, what's your name?
ליאור.
ליאור? אתה שואל אם PDB יהיה במבחן? אני מבינה שזה שם קוד להאם לזכור את זה, אז התשובה היא כן. אבל the exam will be with open material, so everything that potentially we can ask you on everything that's in the notes. Okay? We can even ask you to use imshow with the same parameters as the one that you have in the notes. Okay? Okay, so what happened? It ran here, okay, and then it stopped here, and here I have to click on C for continue in order for the code to continue to run. Okay, and I could also have pressed Q for quit, and then it stops.
הוא פשוט עוצר לך כאילו את הקוד, הוא לא אומר לך מה כאילו נמצא במשתנים וכאלה, הוא רק כאילו עוצר את הקוד עד שאת אומרת לו להמשיך.
זה קוד הכי פשוט, אז אם הייתי פה, תגיד לי שוב, ליאור?
כן.
ליאור asked me, it's only stopping the code? Yes, but I could, if I have here a very complex code, I can ask it here to print all the variables which I want to check, okay? I can ask it to print the variable, but you're right that I would have to write it in the code. I would have to ask for specific variables, whereas if I'm never using these red dots things, but if I do this, okay?
צריכה את החיפושית ליד הסטארט שם, למעלה, בצד איפה שיש לך את ה...
חיפושית? איפה יש לך חיפושית?
כן, כן.
ליד המשולש.
ליד ה...
זה?
כן, חיפושית.
אוקיי.
ואז את עושה סטפ שם, באיפה שהחצים הכחולים.
טוב, I'm going to try
זה
this.
בסדר, זה נגמר הדיבה.
אבל כן, כי זה נגמר. אוקיי, אז this is really useful, but it's not doing exactly the same thing, okay? And it's pretty specific to the... They did it also because the MATLAB, in the MATLAB terminal, it's very common to do this, okay? And then you can print the variables on the go. You don't have to know in advance which variable to print, etc. But you need to be aware that this is super specific to the platform, okay? And I hope that in your future career, you'll use Jupyter notebooks, you'll use... I wish that you will use a terminal with a code that maybe you didn't write, okay? Maybe you didn't write this code and this code is written in a text file and you want it to stop at a certain point. So pdb.setTrace is the way to stop the code somewhere and interactively tell it to continue running. Okay?
יכול להסביר שוב מה זה ה-PDB? אני לא נשמע את זה.
PDB, I'm saying it in Hebrew, זה פקודה שאתה יכול לשים בתוך הקוד שלך, ואז הוא יעצור איפה שכתבת את הפקודה, אוקיי? והוא יעצור, ואז בשביל להגיד לו להמשיך, אתה צריך לעשות משהו, אתה צריך ללחוץ על C בשביל שימשיך. אבל למה זה חשוב? כי יכול להיות שבאיזשהו שלב יש לך איזשהו באג, ובאיזשהו שלב אתה רוצה שהוא ידפיס את כל לא יודעת, מערכים שהגדרת עד כה. אז אתה אומר לו להדפיס אותם, ואז אתה אומר לו PDB, ואז אתה רואה אם הדברים השתמשו לפני או אחרי.
איך לזהות בטן?
כן. זה כלי, it's a tool that helps you track what's going on through your code.
אז ה-set trace זה מה שאמרת ש...
This is the command. I think that people mostly use this command, okay? The PDB package as module has other commands that you can use, okay? It's DB for debugging, so I think it has other resources that you can use to help you debug things, but this is a pretty simple and common one, okay?
וזה מה שאמרת ששמים את זה ואז פה זה צריך ללחוץ על משהו, על C בשביל להמשיך?
Okay, so here I would have to print C, but the important thing to realize, okay, is that many people, I'm showing you PyCharm all the time, and PyCharm is very nice and cute, but many people, I will show you how they code, okay? They open a terminal, then they do vim code.txt. Then they start writing. Import numpy as np, I equal 1,
Why would we prefer
b equal 2. Let's import pdb and then pdb dot. It doesn't tell you if you're wrong, if you did a syntax mistake, okay?
So why use it?
Because the plan is not only that you can code on one platform, only yourself, okay? You should be able to code in a team. If someone sends you his code, you should be able to understand his code. You should be able to use... It's very common, for example, as research students, that you arrived in a team and your supervisor gives you an existing code and tells you, oh, why don't you augment the capabilities of this code so that it can do X, Y, Z on top of what it's already doing, okay? We don't want you to depend on the platform that you're comfortable with and the code that you already know, okay? You need to be able to navigate in codes pre-existing codes, etc. Okay, so okay, so this is my code. Okay, and then I would do Python code.text. Okay, so it stops. And then I tell it to continue. Okay, but this is the common way to run a code is not through PyCharm. Okay, PyCharm is mostly an editor tool that is there to help you code more efficiently. But to run code, usually the way your computer runs the code, it doesn't run the code through PyCharm. Okay, it actually runs it from outside the code. Okay, in the same way that I ran things here. Okay, so this was PDB, and now
מעיין, ראיתי שגם אפשר לרשום לו משתנה שאתה רוצה ל-PDB והוא מחזיר לך את הערך שלו.
כן, נכון. Lior says that you can put inside the PDB, so you can either print everything you want before the PDB.set trace. You can also give PDB set an argument of the variables that you want to print. It's pretty much the same. Okay, but PDB is one way to stop your code if you don't have the nice and comfy PyCharm red dots at hand. Okay? Okay. Now in the time left, so PDB is, you use it once the bugs have happened already. In the time left, I want to give you some tools to try to avoid the bugs before they happen. Okay, and for this we have what we call try except blocks. So they should remind you a bit. So this is the block I'm talking about. Okay, it's made of two sentences, of two statements. There is the try statement where you tell the code, try to do this and this. Okay, here you specify what you want it to try, and then in the except block you can try to think in advance, okay, what kind of errors am I expecting in this specific kind of operations? Let's tell my code that if this error happens, instead of breaking and exiting the code, it should do this and this. Okay, so the try except block is a way to anticipate. Okay, if you anticipate that some errors are likely to happen in a certain operation, or there is, so for example here the operation is a division. Okay, you anticipate that sometimes B will be allocated with a 0 and it will give you an error, and you don't want your code to break just because of this error. Okay, so you want it to do certain things, maybe allocate it with a different value, maybe print something. Okay, maybe exit the code but with a specific message that tells you more clearly in your own words what happened. Okay, so the idea is that you can handle errors without exiting the code. Okay, you don't have to exit. This is what's written here. You don't have to exit from an error. Okay, you can recover from the error and continue. If your code meets this situation, okay, it will know how to handle it because you've anticipated that this issue could occur, and you've told the code how to behave accordingly. Okay, so I will show you one more slide about this, and then we'll look at an example. So in the previous slide there was a try bit and an except bit, right? The more complete picture, if you go to the Python documentation and you look at the more complete documentation on try except blocks, is a block made of 4 statements. Okay, so the first statement is what you want it to try. Okay, you want it to try to do some operation which you anticipate might be problematic. Okay, you want it to try to do this. Then, except, okay, except contains the error that you anticipate will happen. Okay, so for example, currently, if you try to divide an integer by 0 in Python, it will raise an error that it has a name. We'll see. We'll look at the example in a second. But in the run area of PyCharm, it will raise an error called 0 division error, and it will tell you you cannot divide by 0. Okay, so you've anticipated that this error will happen, and you're telling it here in this block. Okay, if you meet this error, do something. Okay? Now, these two pieces, okay, they are a bit less common, but you should know that they exist. So the else is whatever you want your code to do if it didn't meet the error. Okay, if the error didn't occur, and you want it to tell you, okay, you've made the division fine, okay? Then you can add this bit here, okay? And this will happen on the condition that the error has not occurred, okay? And here, the finally block, this will happen in both cases, okay? So, let's summarize. Try is trying an operation, okay? Then except this piece is only happening if the error occurs. Okay? Else is only happening if the error does not occur. Okay? And finally is happening no matter what.
So why you don't just do print after the block?
למה לעשות את הפיינלי?
אפשר, this is actually the reason that in many cases these two blocks will not be used. Okay, if you do only try, then Python will complain because it wants something after the try. But if you do try except, you don't have to do the else thing, and you don't have to do the finally thing. But I can see some cases where you will want this to.
אולי האלס הגיוני, אבל הפיינלי כאילו אין לו כל כך סיבה.
אפשר פשוט פרינט אחרי הבלוק של התנאי.
כן.
כן, אני לא יודעת מה ההבדל בין פשוט לכתוב את זה אחרי. מעניין.
אתה רוצה לדעת אם הוא קורא לפונקציה הזאת.
כן, אבל אפשר היה לכאורה לשים את זה ככה בפונקציה. אוקיי, I will think about it until next time and I will give you an answer. Okay, so let's... כן.
אבל בעצם לא משנה איזו תביעה קוראת, זה מחזיר לך את הבעיה של החלוקה לאפס, נכון?
אז אנחנו עכשיו נסתכל על דוגמה וזה יהיה לכם יותר ברור.
רגע, למה בדיווייד 2 ו1 בסטרינג?
לא, אז חשוב לי שנסתכל על דוגמה ואז השאלות שיהיו לכם זה יהיה על דוגמה קונקרטית.
מה שיש בפיינלי זה תמיד מציג, כל הזמן.
כן. אוקיי, so... Okay, so let's use the 0 division, okay? Okay, and let's see what happens if we don't do this try except thing. Okay? Okay, so I've tried to divide 1 by 0. Python is, okay, and here I want to put, I am running the rest of the code after the problematic thing. Okay? So you see that here, what happened? I've asked Python something that it doesn't want to do. So what did it do? It broke. Okay? It didn't print, it didn't do the rest of the code. Okay? It didn't execute whatever was written after the problematic bit. Okay. Now, what kind of error did it give me? You see here that this here is the name of the kind of errors. Okay, there are many kinds of errors. We'll see a few examples in a second. You can also customize it. I'll show you, the last thing we'll do today is I'll show you how to customize these things. But, okay, so here there is, I'm anticipating, I'm doing a division, I'm anticipating that in some cases this code potentially will break because it will happen that I'm asking a division by 0. Okay, so let's now do it differently. Try, then C equal A over B. Okay, and here it's complaining because this is what I told you before. It will never let you only try something without at least an except statement. Okay, you see that if I stand here, it tells me sometimes tells the error. Okay, except or finally expected. It expects something. Okay, so let's put a general except. This is the most general exception. You cannot divide sorry, I've jumped to the next topic. Print. You cannot divide by 0. Okay, so what happened now? It tried this, it didn't work. So it's executed this, and then instead of breaking, it continued to the rest of the code. Okay? You agree? It's run the code after this problematic statement. Okay? Everybody understands? Yes? Okay.
אז המילה שאת כותבת אחרי ה-except זה לא שם שאת נותנת, את בוחרת מילה מתוך
אוקיי, אז בואו נראה. אז this, you see that exception here is the most general exception. Okay, all exceptions, all kinds of exceptions are an exception. Okay, are under this category. But let's say I want to be more specific. Okay, so you would do, okay, 0 division error. This is the error that you gave me before. Okay, so let's see. Okay, and indeed this is the error that has been raised. Okay, you can. I will now show you another example. Okay, let's assume that I want to open a file that doesn't exist. Let's do f equal open example data not there. Okay, so it will give me an error called file not found error. You see? Okay, so now I can do it with a try except. Try this except file. Okay, it gives me PyCharm is clever. It lets you choose between. So this file exists error. It's a file that doesn't exist. File not found. I'm not sure what's the difference, but these are the kind of errors that can occur with files. Okay, so file not found error, and here I would print the file does not exist. Okay. Now, what if I want to also use a general exception? Okay, I can do. How would I? No, I can have several except statements. okay, print a more general error occurred, okay. Now let's change here. You remember there was several file errors, so file exists error, okay? So let's assume that I'm putting here an exception which is not actually the error that is happening, okay? So this is not the kind of error that occurred. Okay, you see? Another error occurred. The error that occurred is a file not found, not a file not exists, okay? So here it's jumping to this more general exception. Now if you do this, you should always make sure that the more general one is the last one, right? Because otherwise it will always hit the exception before it hits the more specific one. And why do you want to be specific? Basically, the more specific you are, the more you understand what's going on. Correct? If you only use general exceptions, then you'll have more of a handle on what's happening, what's going on wrong. Yes.
אבל אם היינו מריצים את הקוד, איך הייתי יכולה לדעת שזה file exists error?
אז קודם כל, פייתון נותן לך את כל הארורים שיכולים לקרות עם files, אוקיי? וזה עניין של ניסיון. למשל, division by zero, אז אני כבר יודעת שיש error כזה, אוקיי?
ועוד שאלה, נגיד, הרצנו וראינו כבר מה הטעות. אז במקום לעשות except, אי אפשר פשוט לתקן?
אבל, אוקיי, so, אלון? Omer. Omer is asking you, why would you do this? You can just use this to figure out what's going on wrong and then fix things. It's true, but many times you will run the same code with different parameters, okay? Maybe with a certain type of parameters, it brings the division by zero, and with another set of parameters, it wouldn't happen, okay? So you want things to be predictive enough so that you can protect yourself against situations that will depend over the set of parameters. Yes?
אז exception עוזר לנו גם לטעות הראשונה וגם לטעות השנייה שהראינו עכשיו, או שזה עוזר לנו?
פה ה-file exist error, it's a subcategories of the exceptions that can occur. Okay, it's just a more specific. Okay, exception is the more general one. If there is an error, if Python is raising an error, it's an exception. But if Python is raising a file not found error, it's a more specific exception. Okay?
אז exception תמיד יעבוד.
כן, exception תמיד יעבוד, אבל את תאבדי מהספציפיסיות של וגם מהאינפורמטיביות של החלק הזה בקוד. Okay? So, let's assume that now you want to you want to print the error, okay? So, for example, you're not sure whether which kind of error will occur. So you want to print the error. So you can do this. And here you want to return this. The error that occurred is print E. Okay, and here you still want to run the rest of the code without breaking. Okay, so the error that occurred is that there is no such file or directory. Okay, and if you run this without the try except, this is what it will print, right? Okay, it tells you file not found error, not such file or directory.
רגע, מעיין.
כן.
אז למה צריך את כל הקודים אם יש לאחד הזה שפשוט נותן לי ישר את הבעיה?
It allows you to continue to run the code and it doesn't break. Okay, and you're asking why not just always use exception? So I'm telling you that sometimes you will want to be more specific. Okay, imagine that you have two situations that are problematic. One situation is that the file is corrupted, okay? the file, it exists, but it's corrupted. Okay, so this will return you an error. And the other situation is that the file is not there. And you want to react in different ways in both of these situations. So in this case, you have to be more specific, right? Okay, you don't want it to behave when the file is corrupted. You don't want it to behave as if the file does not exist. It exists, but there is an error for a different reason. Okay, so this is why you need the more general one. Yes?
It gives you an error, like a number for the error, but it doesn't give you the condition. How would I get the condition from it? Like if I want to know what the name is.
The name of the file not found error, this?
Yeah.
I don't know. But it would be interesting to check it. I don't know, it gives you, you're right, it gives you whatever is after the...
gives you the description.
Yes, I agree. I don't know. Okay, so... Okay, so I showed you how to use a more general issue. Okay, now else print the file does exist, and let's try this finally. Print I have ran the block to the end. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so here it's entered this part of the block. You see, it tried to open a file that does not exist, didn't find it, it printed this, and then it went to finally. You see that it's running the rest of the code. No, sorry, it's ran the block to the end. I wrote blosh, whatever. Okay, and then it continued. So it found an error, didn't break, ran the finally statement, and continued. Now, what if I have a file that does exist here? Okay, so here you see that it went to the else block. Okay, ran this too because this is run whatever happened. Okay, and then it continued to the end of the code. Okay, now one thing that I like to use is you can customize exceptions. Okay, in some cases there is a situation that is not an error. Okay, Python would not stop running the code if this situation occurs, but you want it to be considered as one. Okay, so it's not very different from an if statement, but it's different in the way it would be displayed. So let me show you an example of like a customized try except block. So and in this case you would not put it in a try except, you would put it in an if statement, and so I'll show you an example. So it tries to open this file that exists, okay, but file okay, I've decided that I really wanted to raise an exception if the name of the file is this. Okay, so you can write here print the name of the file is problematic, but I want it to break. Actually, I do want it to break, so I would raise an exception and I will write the name. I don't like the name of the file. The name of the file. Okay? Okay? So here I'm actually doing the opposite of what I showed you. Okay? What I showed you before we ran this is how to take a situation where Python is complaining about an error but I don't want the code to break. I want it to continue and to handle this error. Okay, this is what I showed you with the try except block. Now I'm showing you the opposite situation. Python is doing something which it doesn't consider as an error, but I want it to behave as if it's an error. Do you understand the difference, the distinction between these cases? Okay, so I've created this raise exception thing, and I'm basically telling Python, if this situation occurs, behave as if there is an error and print it with this. You remember that there was here there was like 0 division or file not found error, and then ... and then it was explaining the file doesn't exist. So here it will call it exception, okay, and it will add the text that you put here, and this will make Python behave as if there is an error. And this is also good for debugging, or for at least for coding defensively, because it tells your code if something happens, don't go further. Okay, you can achieve a very similar effect with the pdb.setTrace. You can say if the file of the name if the name of the file is complain print I don't like the name of the file, and then pdb.setTrace, and it would stop. Okay, it won't break because you would still have the ability to continue with the C. Okay, but it would stop. So this is causing your code to break if something is happening. Okay? Okay, so we'll stop now. I'll just tell you, next time we will continue a bit with all this topic of debugging and coding defensively. I will show you a slightly different way to code defensively with a command called assert, okay, where you can check things on the way, and you can put as many of these in your code, and it's very easy to use and useful. And then I will show you how to log things. Do you know, have you come across logging before? So sometimes you have a very long, I don't know if you've coded long enough codes yet, so that Python prints a lot of text on the way to tell you what it's doing. I don't know if you had long enough codes in your exercises. But sometimes the code is running fine, okay? But it will tell you on the way. Now a file exists, and it will tell you on the way what it's doing, okay? This is called logging, okay? You can ask Python to put it in a file, in a text file, to register all the... Logging is basically keeping a log, is basically keeping track of what's going on, okay? So you can set the levels of verbosity, okay, of how much you want Python to tell you what's going on the way. Okay, you can play with this level. You can tell it, don't tell me anything. If the code works, I don't want to know anything. You can tell it, tell me everything you're doing on the way. Okay, so you can play with this. And you can also customize this. Okay, you can tell it, if something has happened, open a file. This will be a log file, and you can write various things in the log file. So I'll show you next time how to do this. But most of the lecture will be pandas. It's a super important library, very, very important. So next time, come with a lot of energy.
Thank you. Thank you.
רצית לשאול, אתה רוצה שאני אסביר לך את ה-enumerate? שנייה.
רק תסביר ואז...
הוא הכל בסיפור פלוס. לא?